Hi everyone, JJ here. This is Junk Journals 101. I'm going to be answering some questions today about junk journaling and making things, maybe hopefully clearing up a few things about signatures and how to determine what size to cut your paper with your signature and options that you have of covering the inside of your book. Now, just jump right in and talk about covering your book. First thing I want to say is you should always, if you want to cover the outside of your book and fully cover, so you change the color of your book, cover the outside of your book first before you start doing anything to the inside of your book. And the only option would be on that is if you wanted to see, like my spine is apart here, if I wanted to put any tape or anything on that to make sure that that is together first before I start covering it, that would be the only thing I would do. So everything I'm talking about here would be after you've covered the outside of your book. Now if you don't want to cover the outside of your book, you like your spine, you like the outside cover, you just maybe want to glue a few things to the cover, that's fine. You don't have to do anything to the outside cover. We can just go directly to the inside and get it covered. Okay, so let's talk about determining the size of paper that you're going to use in your signatures. What I normally do is I look at my book and I determine the size that I want my signature to be. I want it on the inside of my cover. So a good option is to use this cover paper that's on the inside. All of the covers have, all books have an inside cover. And what I normally do is I go just to the inside of this cover and I try to find a measurement. You're very blessed if you find a measurement on the cover itself as well as the inside cover that is a perfect measurement. So like an 8.5 or an 8 1/4 or 8 3/4. Most of them are very, very sporadic in their measurements. So the first measurement we're going to take is from the top to the bottom. And this is going to determine the height of our paper. Our signatures in this one is going to be 8 3/4. And how I determine that is I want a little bit of room at the top and I want a little bit of room on the bottom. A little bit of room can change. It could be a 1/16 of an inch, it could be an 1/8 of an inch, it could be a 1/4 of an inch. It could even be a 1/2 inch if you want it to be. It doesn't have, there's not a set number that you have to have or a set measurement that you have to have in here. You just want it, your signature to set on the inside of your cover when you sew it into your book. And so for this cover, because we're looking at 9 and an 1/8, it's a little over an 1/8. It's like 9 3/16. This book is. So the inside cover paper is a little under 9. I would make my signatures right at 8 3/4 because that gets me to where I have a little bit of playroom in the book itself. So 8 3/4 is what I'd write down. And then how you determine the width of your paper, right? How wide your papers are going to be. You want everything to set, like I said before, on the inside of your cover. And I usually take the measurement. I don't want to be over into my spine at all. So I want to start where the cover right ends before it goes into the spine area. Okay, so I'm going to set my ruler here and I'm going to just say, okay, so this is approximately 5 3/4 of an inch. So I want to take a 1/2 inch off of this measurement. And why I say a 1/2 inch is because you want to have a 1/2 inch in here so that when you put on lace, say you put on tabs, paper clips, paper clip things into your book, have extra doilies hanging over, anything like that, that it's inside your cover. That protects it. Now you may want it hanging on the outside of your cover, therefore you would make your signatures a little wider if you want it hanging out on the outside of the book. But I recommend about a 1/2 inch. You're still going to have some hang out, especially if you use lace. So I would go 5 1/4, 5 1/8. You could even cut it down to 5 inches if you wanted to. And that would give you plenty of room in there. So whatever measurement works for you, works for that. Just if you take the overall measurement of your cover, take a 1/2 inch off, that's going to give you that 1/2 inch there. And that's usually a pretty good guideline. Okay, so I originally did the measurement at 5 1/8. So therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this 5 1/8 by 2. The reason why that is because you're folding your papers to go into your signatures, especially if you're sewing them into your book. Now, if you're using type like a ring type binder or something like that, or hole punching it, this is your measurement. You don't want to fold it in half and then punch it. But if you're sewing in your signatures, you've got to fold it in half. So that means we got to take our measurement at 5 1/8, and we need to multiply that by 2 to get our overall cutting size. So we're going to cut our signature papers at 8 3/4 by 10 1/4. Okay? Now, with that being said, there's other options besides just cutting your paper off. And some of your papers are going to be shorter in height. Some of them are going to be shorter in width. Because in a junk journal, that gives you variety. Right? If you have all kinds of different papers. Some of them are going to be torn, everything like that. All of that is good. I like a lot of times, instead of cutting my paper straight off, is I take that measurement, whatever the measurement is, of the single measurement. So the 5 1/8 or 5 inches, and I put a mark there. And then I take and I fold my paper, right on that mark. Now see, I didn't do that very straight, did I? But that's okay, because I know where I'm going with it. So I straighten up my edges, right? Push it forward, right on that mark. Sorry, it's white, it glares. So I have a hard time seeing it. Okay. And it's not perfect. You can put it on your scoreboard, if you have a scoreboard, or in your trimmer, and you can score it, or you can put your ruler there and fold it up against your ruler on that line. That works too. So now this one's going to be a little longer, right? So instead of cutting that off, what I'm going to do is take and fold this in. And I just fold it in. Now I have a flip out. Okay? So you don't always have to cut your papers off. You can fold them in. You could tear them off, whatever you want to do. Now this is going to be sewn in to your journal, and then this side is going to be a full piece of paper, but this side now has a flip out that's going to flip out where you can glue something in here. You can make journaling lines in here, all types of things in there, okay? So don't think you have to cut it all off at the same length. What I usually do is try not to go over. Anything that goes over my measurement, I either fold in, or I tear off, or I cut off. So I hope that helps. Okay, so let's move on to covering the inside of here, because you have a lot of options. One option is using these papers here, and you would take a piece of paper, scrapbook paper, cardstock, whatever. What I usually like doing is I either like using a punch on the edges and allow for an extra 1/2 inch per side with an edge punch, or a decorative edge scissors. Now this one I did with a decal edge scissor. I just cut down along the edge of the paper. This I would glue in here. Now, how I determine this length is by this paper here. I'm going to go barely over this paper. When I measured it at 9 inches. It gets me barely over this paper. That's what I cut the length to. Then I also allow for at least an inch coming out from each side. You can do 1.5 inches, you can do 2 inches, you could even do halfway out on your cover. It's up to you as to how you want to, what depth you want cut in here on this side of it. So the other option you have is if you want to, maybe you don't want to cover this with paper, maybe you want to ink in the whole area here, like ink in from the sides or whatever, and stamp an image in here. You could do a large flower, you could do a large butterfly, you could do a series of flowers, you could stencil, you could even do, you could paint the inside of it, you could use embossing paste, that's the texture paste that goes in the stencil and makes the design. You could do that. You could do a little mixed media in here. Be careful about doing too much wet application though, because it can warp your book with that. So try to keep it as dry as possible. You could spray a little bit, you know, spray and tap it off with a paper towel and do that on the inside. You're still going to use this either decorative paper or something like that. Now I will say if you want to paint the inside cover or you want to do any kind of inking or anything like that, I usually try to do those type of things before I put the center paper in, because then you're not getting anything messy on the center paper. The other option would be is you could put down a piece of maybe wax paper or parchment paper or something and use painter's tape along the edge. I don't recommend that, but it is an option. It can still tear your paper a little bit. Okay, the other option is you can put this down first and then put scrapbook paper cut to the size. So you want it to go over the cover paper in here because you want to cover it completely. And then you could even use a decorative edge scissor on this paper or on a edge punch down across here. Just don't go over into your spine any with this paper here. Okay. The other option that you have is to put this paper on first and then put the center paper over the top of it. Okay. With the decorative edge right in there. So those are some options that you have for covering the inside of your book. Okay, so I hope that answers some questions that you had. If it doesn't answer all the questions, let me know. I'll be happy to do another demonstration video. Oh, one more thing. The other option that you have is instead of doing you can do it instead of decorative paper here, or you can do it on top of the decorative paper, and that is making a large pocket to go in here to where you could put mementos, tickets, pictures that you want to put in your book later, anything that you want to save. Making a large pocket. You can put a large pocket in the front, you can put a large pocket in the back. This is a fully completed pocket that opens up from the side, so you can make a pocket that fits this whole area. So if you'd like to know how to do that, I'd be happy to show that as well for you, because you can actually put a pocket in there. I've done one where I've inked instead of doing scrapbook paper, I've inked this whole edge so it blends with the paper that I'm going to make my pocket out of, and then just made this a pocket. And that's how I covered my inside paper. So that's an option that you have as well. So anyway, I hope that answers your questions. I hope the visual helps a lot on your journey in junk journaling. So yeah, if you have more questions, let me know, and I hope you are enjoying your day. Talk to you later.